Okay, hello. Sanibona zithandwa zami, Dumelang, Absheni, sanibona konke leni khona zithandwa zika Dr. Nomcebo Mthembu. Welcome to Intimate with Dr. Nomcebo Mthembu. Of course, I am your host, isithandwa sakho. Uyazi-ke nawe kule platform yethu, it's our sacred space. Lapho sikhuluma khona ukuphila, lapho sikhuluma khona ngempilo, lapho sikhuluma khona ngomdavazo, sikhulume ngothando, sikhulume ngescience. Kodwa uyazi-ke kona konke, there's a hint of truth, but also a lot of tenderness. Welcome, Senozam, as ni joiner. It is yet another episode of Sex on Sunday. You are intimate with Dr. Nomcebo Mthembu. Namhlanje-ke sithando zami, I am very honored ukuthi i-guest yami, it's someone that I respect very, very much. Umuntu who is a brilliant mind, an African brilliant mind, owenze indlela eziphambili ngokwelapha kwengculaza esandulela ngculaza, not just e-Africa but in the whole world at large. So besikhuluma ngaye, ngiyazi ukuthi benizwa nje endabeni, ngeke ngakhuluma ngako futhi ekhosini ukuthi ngizobe ngikhuluma ngoprofessor. Uprofessor ozobe kuyena owenze lo canungo lithi hayibo kunendlela yini besikade senza ngayo okusuzoshintsha ekulapheni kwethu isandulela ngculaza. Ngiyazi ke sithando zami, sonke somehow si-infected ngayo or affected ngayo, kodwa egcineni namhlanje ngifuna wena sithando sami ngikulethelele le exclusive kuze wena wazi ukuthi mina ngikuthanda kanjani ku Dr. Mthembu, kodwa kakhulu ngifuna ukuthi ube nolwazi so that noma yini oyizwayo on social media or on TV, but you have got first-hand knowledge and education. That is how much I am loving you right now. So grab your cup of coffee, get cozy, and get comfortable. Ngoba lalela, today it is about the books. Sizoba naye khona manje uprofessor. So sithando zami nginilethela yena-ke uProf Ndung'u unami namhlanje all the way ule phesheya eLondon, kodwa la kunina right here on our platform, and for me it is a huge honor, a very big honor. uProf has done extensive research over 20 years research uProf ayenza around ama treatments HIV nokufeyila kwawo, kodwa kakhulu into engithokozisayo, he's doing research about what is new, what are the new strategies. So he's here exclusively just for you. So la ukhona ke sana zami, send me a message, okay? Ngizokuphendula naye uProf ukhona la uzokuphendula noma yini ofuna ukuyazi. Yebo sobe sikhuluma nge-research entsha uProf ayenzile, kodwa even more than that, I want you to be free and open because this is your sacred space. Now, Prof, thank you so much, Prof Ndung'u, for being here and for joining us. It is such a pleasure to have you here all the way from London. Yesterday, I was on radio on Ukhozi FM last night, and I told all the listeners, and remember, Ukhozi FM has over 7 million listeners. So I told all of them that I'm going to be with you, and I've been having so many messages, and people are like, we'll all be listening. We just want to hear, we want to hear. And people are excited about it because inevitably, somehow, HIV/AIDS affects all of us, whether you're infected or not, but somehow it affects you because you are in relation with HIV/AIDS everywhere you are. Whether it's because of fear, you're afraid of it, every time you want to be intimate with your partner, there's always that ringing thing that says, hey, there's a little man up there called HIV. So I'm so excited to be sitting with a brilliant mind like yourself today, Prof. So before we get into the gist of why you are here, Prof, I would, for me, more than anything, it's the fact that here is a black man making leeway in science research. And for me, there's a part of me where my hairs just stand up with pride. Uguti, this is the person. We are all looking at scientists to come up with solutions around HIV/AIDS. And here it comes with the person of African soil. And I want to take it back, Prof. As you greet our viewers, I would like to take it back. Who is a Prof Ndung'u? Who is a Prof Thumbi Ndung'u? Where did he grow up? And because for me, there's a little child out there that used to be Prof, and I want some child out there to say, hey, if that is him, I can be him too. So I'd like to know about him personally, where you come from, leading into your professional life.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Mthembu, for having me on the show. It's a great pleasure to be on your platform. I'm Professor Thumbi Ndung'u, and I grew up in Kenya, in rural Kenya.
Wow.
I actually grew up on a coffee farm.
Wow.
So my parents were coffee farmers, and so I grew up there. We didn't have any sort of running water or electricity. When I was growing up, it was very basic sort of life, but very happy childhood as well. I grew up in a family of 11. We are 11 siblings. So it was, as you can imagine, but it was a fun place to grow up in the highlands of Kenya, on a farm there.
Wow. Do you think, just going into that, I didn't know that you were exposed to coffee plantations. I mean, nowadays, there's so much research about coffee and its medicinal value. I mean, for you who grew up drinking coffee, is there certain stuff that we are now excited about, coffee enemas and coffee for the skin and what coffee can do for you? Is it stuff that when you grew up, you're like, we were doing that every day. Coffee did that to us.
Actually, it was more my view of coffee is not as romantic as most people.
Okay.
Because I grew up on a farm, and what we did was work on the farm and work very hard.
Yeah.
And in fact, most of the times we didn't consume that coffee because we had to sell it off as a cash crop.
Wow.
And instead of the coffee, we actually drank tea because it was cheaper to take tea. And so my family mostly sold off the coffee, and then we would buy tea, which was cheaper.
The story of Africa, hey? We produce world-class vegetables here, but they're not for us to consume. It's for the internationals to consume, and then we consume the cheapest stuff. That, the story of Africa. So, but yeah,
that's what we need to change. That's what we need to change about Africa.
Yes, us first.
Absolutely.
Us knowing that Itina who deserve the best more than sending it out and believing someone else believes. Oh, I'm very honored to hear you saying that. So, Prof, then I'd like to get into your professional life. Where you are now and leading up to you and your science research.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I grew up in rural Kenya, and then I went to high school also in rural Kenya, and then I was very privileged to get an opportunity to go and study veterinary medicine at the University of Nairobi. So I studied to be a veterinarian, and I finished my degree. But then when I finished my degree, I couldn't really get a job. It was in the early 1990s, and it was quite difficult to get a job in Kenya. Kenya was going through a very difficult time politically because of there was a lot of agitation for Kenya to become a multi-party democracy. And so I couldn't really get a job. And so I was very lucky and fortunate to, when I was thinking what to do next with my life, to be offered a position as a research assistant by a professor at the University of Nairobi who was working on a disease called bilharzia or schistosomiasis, which is a disease that affects a lot of people, but is neglected because it affects poor people. Yeah. So I got an opportunity to study, to be a research assistant, and that really is what set me off to a career of research, because I immediately realized that this was very exciting, and I could see myself doing this for life. I could, and I actually was quite good at it.
Wow.
So I stuck with it, and then I got an opportunity to go and do a PhD, to do my doctoral studies at Harvard University in the United States.
Wow.
And when I got there, HIV was just beginning to become known as a big public health issue. And when I listened to the talks there, to the lectures, and to the professors there, I realized that this was going to become a big public health problem. And I knew that this is what I really wanted to work on, because it was relevant to Africa, and that's how I got into HIV research.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. Just to translate a little bit to my viewers, from what you are saying, to me, that also is just a beautiful principle in a lesson. You studied for one thing, but life detoured you into something else. Kanti life was detouring you into the life that you are meant to live, and the life you are meant to live. So had you not gone into the bilharzia studies, you wouldn't be who you are now, So to me, that is very beautiful. Sithandwa zami ke ibilharzia la khuluma ngayo isichenene. Ukushuthi waqala ukusebenza esebenza nodokotela abakhuluma ngesichenene, kanti impilo siyamshintsha simfaka in a direction where he's meant to be. So to me, that is just fate talking. Ukuthi sometimes impilo, things will change for you. And it means go with the flow. Ngoba mhlambe your path and your destiny is really along that path. So back at you, Prof. Of course, you are all over our media in South Africa just a while ago. And you got so many people excited. I remember I was on radio that time on 9 o'clock news for one of my slots on Ukhozi FM, and I heard the newsreader talking about your research. And for me, I was like, wow, I want to know more about that. I want to know about that. And for me, I'm a scientist also before I'm a medical doctor. So for me, that was interesting. But I can just imagine umuntu wasemakhaya owezwa nje this information about HIV research and HIV treatment. It's possible that omunye might think, oh, that means I must stop my medication, ngoba akazi what it is. So the reason why I decided to do this platform is because ngifuna umlaleli ekhaya nongwazisanga kahle ukuthi kuthiwani ngale treatment entsha noma ngale research entsha ehambisana nokutreatwa kwe-HIV ayizwe khona la ku-Dr. Nomcebo Mthembu Network. So dedela uprof ke manje asitshele ngayo ke le research yakhe ukuthi iyini research yakhe nokuthi yini la ayitholile, which is very, very promising ngokuthi i-future yokutreateka kwe-HIV izoba njani. So just before I start, Prof, I want to read this message. I actually have it here in my phone from one of the guests who was so excited yesterday and sent me this voice note. This is what they said. I'll read it in Zulu, okay? They're saying, Hi Dokotela, uyaphila. Hey, yaze yangijabulisa le ndaba ukuthi uzokukhuluma noProf. Kuze ngizwe kahle ngalamaphilisi mina nopartner wami sisanda ukuwaqala since sisanda ukuthola ukuthi sinaleli gciwane. Iyasikhathaza lento yokuthi siphuze leli philisi, so kungamnandi ukuma kusazi ukuthi siliphuza nje kodwa khona lapho lizophelela khona. So this was a caller. So ideally, this one, Prof, they've just recently been diagnosed. And when they heard about your research also, they weren't sure what to do, whether to start medication or not to start medication. So I know they will be listening to the show because she wants to know exactly what is happening and what is the promising research that you have found.
Okay. Just to answer your caller directly, I would start antiretroviral medication. I think it's very important that people start antiretroviral medication if they are living with HIV, because it is the only thing that we have at the moment that is able to control HIV and reduce it to undetectable levels. And that has a lot of benefits. It improves your health. And secondly, you cannot transmit the virus to somebody else if you are on antiretroviral therapy and your viral load is completely suppressed. So I think it's very important that people should know that there is no cure for HIV at the moment, and the only way to really deal with the virus is to be on antiretroviral medication. However, we also know that people do get tired of antiretroviral medication. And a lot of people would like to have an alternative to antiretroviral medication. And so our research is geared towards developing an alternative to antiretroviral medication. In other words, can we do something that will allow the body to control the virus without the person having to take antiretroviral medication every single day? Because at the moment, you have to take antiretroviral medication for the rest of your life. And it is not easy to take a pill every single day for the rest of your life. And also, some of the medications might have some side effects on people. And we also don't know what the impact is going to be of taking antiretroviral medication over a long period of time. So what we are trying to do is to see whether we can develop an alternative to antiretroviral medication. And there are two ways the scientists are thinking of doing that. One would be to completely eradicate the virus from the body so that the virus is completely gone and you cannot detect it at all. But the second approach is to try and see whether you can boost the immune response in the person so that the person controls the virus without antiretroviral medication. So the virus is not completely gone, but the person goes into what we call remission. So that's what our research is trying to do, is to try and see whether we can eradicate HIV or induce what we call antiretroviral-free remission. In other words, the person goes into some kind of remission they don't have to take antiretroviral medication, but their health remains very good and they cannot still transmit it to somebody else.
Sure. I would like to just translate that in Zulu quickly.
Yeah.
Kulabo benu abangazange baze bamuzwe Prof. Uthi Prof i-research yabo into abazama ukuyenza ngoba bayazi ukuthi kuona wonke umuntu odla amaphilisi lawa ama-ARVs emshanguzo kumele ulithathe le philisi zonke izinsuku impilo yakho yonke until and uyazi futhi ukuthi science wena as umuntu oliphuzayo le philisi kuhamba ukhathale. So ubona i-research yapha ngesikhathi eyiqala wefuna ukuthi number 1 bathole ukuthi ikhona yini indlela yokuthi umuntu agcine engaliphuzi le philisi ngokuthi either 1 i-HIV le bayiqede totally egazini noma ukuthi bamnikeze into thizeni eyibooster. I-booster ke sithando sami into ezokwenza ukuthi amasosha akho omzimba abe strong enough yokuthi iwona sekuvikela. So yithi noma ikhona igciwane awuguli awunalutho kodwa futhi into ebalekile awusakwazi ukuthi udlulisele komunye umuntu. So i-research yabo ko Prof ilapho ke ekuthenini ayiphele tu lento ukuthi noma ikhona kodwa ayigulisi wena and awuphuza iphilisi and futhi awazi ukuthi uyidlulisele komunye umuntu. Asiqhubeke sizwe futhi Prof. You may continue, Prof.
Yeah, so that's what we have been trying to do, and what we did in this specific study that we did in Durban is we took women. All of them were women, and the reason we studied women in our case is because we have been, over a long period of time, since 2012, there's a group of women that we have been following over time.
Okay.
These women come into our clinic when they are HIV negative initially. They are HIV negative, but they are sexually active. So we give them what we call a socioeconomic empowerment program. So they come, they learn how to use computers. We teach them about how to prepare for a job interview. We teach them about job opportunities that may be there.
Life skills.
So life skills that they need to improve their lives, because most of them are women who have dropped out of school. So we're trying to help them improve their lives. But when they come into the clinic twice a week, we also take a finger prick blood draw. We take a sample of blood from them, and we go and test that sample for HIV. Now, because when they come into the study, in the first place, they are HIV negative. What it means is that if somebody becomes HIV positive in the course of being in the study, because these are women who are obviously going on with their normal lives. They go home every single day and they have sex and they may get HIV infected. So if somebody gets HIV infected, we are able to detect HIV infection immediately. So that's what we did. So we took those women that had been taking antiretroviral therapy for at least 1 year.
Okay.
And because their immune system is quite good, because they started treatment very early, we told them we want to test a strategy to see whether we can actually get rid of HIV or boost the immune system so that the immune system controls the virus without antiretroviral therapy. But in order for us to find out whether that is possible, it means that they have to stop antiretroviral treatment. So we call them broadly neutralizing antibodies, 2 broadly neutralizing antibodies, and another product that we call, in scientific terms, we call it Toll-like receptor 7 agonist. It's something that boosts the immune cells. And then we ask the women to stop antiretroviral treatment, but under very close clinical monitoring. We test them every single week to see whether the virus is rebounding. And that kind of study takes a lot of effort because you have to explain the study to the women. They have to agree to be part of it. Yes. But you also have to talk to the community at large and explain to the community what you are trying to do.
Sure.
You also have to go to the ethics committee and the regulatory authorities in South Africa, such as, in the case of South Africa, it is SAPRA, and ask them to approve the study.
Sure.
So they allowed us to do the study. And what we found is that after 1 year of stopping antiretroviral treatment, most of the women had rebounded. In other words, the virus came back. But there was 4 women out of 20 where the virus did not come back, even after 1 year, without antiretroviral treatment. So what that tells us is that this strategy that we used, it is working, but it's working only in a minority of people, 4 out of 20. That's about 20%. So it doesn't work in everybody, and that's why we cannot roll it out to people. That's why we are not saying that this is a cure, because it is not. We're just saying this is the initial part of this work. It is very promising, but it is not a cure yet. But it is very promising, and hopefully we can learn more and be able to come back with something else that might actually work in more people.
Sure. So before I translate, Prof, so basically, it's possible that you will now be studying these 4 women to find out what it is that is common kubona that has actually made them ukuthi i-virus ingabuyi.
Exactly. That, in fact, is what we are doing very actively at the moment. So we have laboratory studies that are ongoing to find out what is it about these 4 women that is different from the others that did not control. And if we can find out what it is about those women, that would help us to develop the next generation of an HIV cure strategy that might work much better than what we saw in the current study.
Wow. Wonderful. So sithanda zami kunina laba ogogo abalalele mhlawumbe abanga-understandanga. So uthi Prof le study basenza kubantu baseThekwini, omama baseThekwini, okay? Abantu ababebalandela njalo almost isonto lonke befuna ukuba-check-a yonke into ngamagazi abo, okay? So labantu babaqala bathi mebethole i-HIV babaqala ku-medication le eniyaziyo niyemshanguze, okay? Kodwa babe u-20 kule test study sabo, okay? Okusho ukuthi kodwa ngihlale ngikhuluma-ke nasokhosini ngangikhuluma ngesikhathi ngikhuluma nge-HIV ukuthi kunomehluko komuntu one-HIV nomuntu one-AIDS. Ngoba masune-AIDS kusho ukuthi ume isikhathi eside manje wanezinye izifo esezixhakela. So la bona basebenzisa abantu obekade nje beqeda ukuthola ukuthi une-HIV, so ayikakangeni ukuthi izifika ukuthi kuyi-AIDS useyagula umzimba wakhe before eqala i-treatment, okay? Ngoba kubalekile nako lokho. So ngesikhathi bemqala ku-medication lo muntu njengoba babe u-20 babantu ababaqala, kwathi emva konyaka beqalile i-medication babayekisa ukuthi abake bayiyeka ama-ARVs, babanikeza lo muthi thizeni engithi mina ngizobiza ngokuthi kwakuyi-booster, into ezosiza nje ukuthi immune system yakhe ibe stronger, ngoba khumbula ukuthi uqale ama-antiretrovirals early, okusho ukuthi umzimba wakhe bungakakhahlaziseki ubengakangeni ku-AIDS stage, ne? So already immune system yakhe lo muntu ubisavuma ukuthi noma yini esikunikeza yona immune system yakhe izoyimukela. So kulabantu ababathesta kukhona abawu-4 lapho abathi noma sibe batesta bathola ukuthi igciwane alisatholakali ngoba kwadinga ukuthi bayiyeke i-medication after unyaka, okay? Uma belebe batesta for unyaka, so you tested them again for over a year, Prof?
We followed them for 1 year, yes.
For 1 year, okay? So bawuyeka i-medication for unyaka, babalandela futhi for unyaka ukuthi kukhona yini lami uma beba-check viral load kanje bethola ukuthi i-virus iyabuya. Kulabo bathola ukuthi kukhona abawu-4 lapho ingazange izibuye khona i-virus. Okusho ukuthi u-20% we-study sabo abasenza yaba i-win. Kodwa uyabona-ke manje u-20% kuno-80% okuyiwona ongazange uze uwine kule study sabo. Kodwa-ke lento indlela into evula into yaphambili ngoba kusho ukuthi khona into e-right eyenzeka kulaba abawu-20%. Okuyiyona-ke manje ucwaningo labo seligxile kubona-ke ukuthi laba abawu-4 okuwukuthi ingculaza ayibuyanga kubona ingobani. Bathesta amagazi abo, bathesta mhlambe ne-lifestyle yabo ukuthi yini abayenzile laba abangayenzanga laba abanye eyenze ukuthi kubona lingabuyi igciwane. So njengoba bebathesta-ke sebezokwazi-ke manje nabo isizobatshela ukuthi noma sebebenika i-booster yini enye mhlawumbe kufanele bayi-ede kuze manje ibe njengalo 4 okuwukuthi bona igciwane alibuyanga kubona. So kumina zithandwa zami leyo nto iwumhlahlandlela omkhulu ngoba iyasho ukuthi ngeminyaka emthize nje ezayo kukhona okukhulu okuzayo ngoba lento abayifunayo Prof ukuthi ngampela siyeke ukuthi siphuze lamaphilisi lawa asigcinezelayo ngoba ngiyanazi kakhulukazi izalukwazi zami azifuni lamaphilisi abanikeza izinkwantshu ablock imithambo yegazi ezwa nemithambo ivaleke ziningi ama-side effects abakhona vele uma kuwukuthi udla amaphilisi. Nakunina-ke sana zami zemdavazo ngiyazi ukuthi niyakhala ngayo. So ngikulona lo hambo nayo uProf ngiyohlala nginitshela noma kukhona into entsha evelayo ezobe intshela ukuthi manje sukula. But for now into ebalekile I think uProf ayishoyo ukuthi if treatment don't stop, okay? Qhubeka because bona baqhubeka nocwaningo bona. Once ucwaningo solukhona, leyo nto iyobe public information, which means even nani-ke ngoba uProf niyambona ukuthi usesithandwa sethu, nani nizobe senithola, nami ku-Dr. Mthembu nizobe sengisho ukuthi hayi uma kuwukuthi unje singayeka but nakhona ngeke nje sivele sisho emoyeni sithi stop. No, ngeke sikusho lokho. Kunezinto ezithize ezifuna ukuthi uProf abazistadishayo ukuthi yini nani kufanele siyitshele umuntu kuze sithi akayeke ukuphuza lama ARVs lawa. Okay? All right. Ngizobuyela kuyena-ke futhi uProf. Okay, Prof, you may continue.
Yeah, so that's what we did, and so I think what this shows is that it is possible to achieve this kind of what we are calling ARV-free control of HIV, but we are not there yet, and I would not recommend that anybody interrupts ART unless they are in a clinical trial, in a clinical study that is approved by the ethics committee like ours. But this is very promising, and it shows that we may have a cure for HIV in future, which is what people living with HIV would like.
Yes.
But I would also like to add that in addition to this kind of, so it's very exciting science. People sometimes they say, it's impossible to make progress. But, there was a time, people should remember there was a time there was no ARVs and people are dying a lot. And then we got some drugs that were not very good, that were very toxic. But now we have only one single pill that somebody has to take. So we are making a lot of progress, and we have made a lot of progress, both for HIV treatment and HIV prevention.
Sure.
And what we should be advocating, I hope that all of us can advocate so that this kind of research can be supported in South Africa, in Africa, because HIV is a problem that is the biggest in Africa.
Yes.
So that we can make progress. But the other thing that I wanted to point out is that the work that we are doing involves a lot of young people. We have a lot of young people, for example, in my laboratory and other laboratories who are actually doing this work. And what we should also be doing is to encourage this kind of research,
Sure.
so that Africa, going forward, does not have to depend on others
Yes.
to provide the solutions for our problems. We need to innovate. We need to make new drugs, the next generation of solutions.
Right.
We shouldn't just be waiting for other people to develop solutions so they can bring them to us. We should be very proactive, and we should be putting pressure on our governments to invest, because to invest in our young people and to invest in science, because anybody can be a scientist.
Sure.
As long as God has given you the mind to do this kind of work, and you have a lot of potential in South Africa and in Africa, but we are not exploiting that potential to its fullest.
Yes, I love that. I generally say to my organization of young people, I always say that one day in the future, Africa will be led by Africans. And when I say led, I'm also just talking about what you're saying, Africans being in the forefront of African problems, taking the matter into our own hands and not being charity cases. So I really love what you're saying, Prof. We have a voice note. I'm not sure if my technical, I think, can you please play us the voice note?
Dr. Nomcebo Mthembu, ngicela ukungazisho nje namhlanje igama. Yazi dokotela, nginenkinga la. Sengithandana nomuntu isikhathi nje eside singango 4 years. Kodwa inkinga enginayo ukuthi yena me-testa utholakala ukuthi upositive. Kodwa me-testa mina ngithola ukuthi nginegative. Sengiteste kaningi nje dokotela, kodwa nje kuyafana nje vele kubuye ukuthi nginegative. Manje bengicela ukubuza dokotela lana ukuthi amaphilisi mhlambe mina ngingawaqala noma ngingenze njani nje. Sicela ungiphuvu lwakho ngalolu daba. Ngiyabonga. Sawubona Dr. Nomcebo Mthembu. Ngicela ukungazisho nje namhlanje.
Okay. All right. Just to translate, Prof. It sounds to me like a youngish woman who is in a relationship, but the partner is positive, and yet she is negative. Okay. And she's been testing many a times, but she's afraid that, there's always a stigma. And I think I would like Prof to talk about that if you're testing and you've been sleeping with someone who's positive and you are still negative, it means HIV is killing you silently. One day you'll just drop and die without being tested positively, or you're going to get very sick. And I think that also brings a lot of fear to people who keep testing negative. And then they want to say, let me just take ARVs, or let me just take PrEP, or so with this young lady, that's where she is. Of course, there's a lot of fear, and also just uncertainty. What do I do? Where do I go? My partner, I'm continuing to sleep with him, but I'm still testing negative, and yet he is positive.
Yeah, it's a very important question, and thank you to that caller for the courage to speak about her situation. I think I would need a bit more information to be able to give the right advice. But the correct thing is, if the partner is taking antiretroviral medication, that's a critical issue. Because if the partner is taking antiretroviral medication, is undetectable, has undetectable viral load, they cannot transmit the virus.
Undetectable, untransmittable.
Undetectable equals untransmissible.
Yes.
So if the virus is undetectable, the person cannot transmit the virus to somebody else. How do you get the virus to undetectable? You get the virus to undetectable by taking antiretroviral medication. If you're taking your antiretroviral medication, your viral load should be undetectable, and you cannot transmit the virus to somebody else. Now, if the partner is not on antiretroviral medication, then that's a very tricky situation because she could get infected. And the only way that she could prevent transmission to her is the use of barrier contraceptive, that's condoms, or she could take PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, to prevent herself from getting infected. But if the partner is taking antiretroviral medication and is undetectable, she has nothing to worry about.
Okay. So I've had a few patients like these where you find that the person has been, even before, the person, generally the man, even before he started taking treatment, but they've been having unprotected sex for years. And yet this person is not getting the virus. And I know, in the streets, there's this blood type O. This person is blood type O. This person is a carrier. Can you perhaps just explain that with someone being a carrier, for example, and are they able to transmit the virus and yet they are carriers, but they are testing negative, but they can carry it and give it to someone else?
So anybody who has HIV and is detectable, has detectable viral load, they are not on antiretroviral medication. That person is at a risk of transmitting that virus to somebody else. So the golden rule should be that if you are living with HIV, you should be on antiretroviral medication to protect your own health, but also to make sure that you don't transmit that virus to somebody else. Now, it is true that there are people who, for reasons that we don't fully understand, are exposed to HIV, but don't get infected.
Sure.
Now, so not every sexual act results in HIV transmission. There are people who may have sex 2 times, 3 times, even more than that, with somebody who has detectable viral load and don't get infected. However, if you continue to have sex with somebody who is living with HIV and has detectable viral load, you're always risking that somewhere down the line, you will get infected. And that's why we say to prevent the onward transmission of HIV, the only sure way to do that is for the person who is living with HIV to be on antiretroviral medication. That is the surest way to prevent onward transmission of HIV. But it doesn't mean that every time you have sex with somebody who is living with HIV that you will get infected.
Sure.
It is quite common that sometimes you can have sex with somebody who is living with HIV and not get HIV yourself.
Okay, and can you just talk to us about the blood type O scenario that everyone keeps saying, if they're blood type O, most chances this person cannot get HIV, or what is your experience with that?
There is no evidence that any blood type actually protects anybody from getting HIV. And there has been a lot of research done on this, and there is no evidence that any blood group or blood type prevents somebody from getting or acquiring HIV. That has been debunked. Is not correct. There are people who are resistant to HIV because of their genetic makeup.
Okay.
And the genetic makeup has to do with a molecule. I hope I don't get too scientific here, but in order for HIV to enter the cell of somebody and infect that person, there are 2 receptors on the cell that are needed. One is called CD4, and another one is a molecule called CCR5. You need those 2 molecules on the cell surface in order for the virus to enter the cell. There are some people who naturally, they were born without CCR5. And those people without CCR5, they cannot get infected by HIV. However, those people are a very small minority in the world, less than 1% of people in the world. So those people are resistant to HIV, but they are very small minorities, so I wouldn't bet on that one to it is much better to protect yourself
Yes, than to
bet on that the person that your partner is going to be, or that you yourself are going to be CCR5 negative.
Negative. Oh, no, wonderful. And,
Yeah.
I know that when people also talk and they say mosquito, someone has been bitten by mosquito and a mosquito bites you, but then it goes and then you've got someone's blood in your blood and then the mosquito goes and vomits it somewhere. Can you just tell us about how, if someone is bitten by a mosquito and the mosquito goes and bites someone who's negative, that person cannot transport, the mosquito cannot transmit the HIV virus?
The mosquito cannot transmit the HIV virus because the virus, you need quite a bit of the virus, a high viral load of the virus in order to be able to transmit to somebody else. And the amount of blood that a mosquito bites is not enough. You also need the virus to replicate in the mosquito cells, and HIV does not replicate in mosquito cells. So the amount of blood that a mosquito sucks out of somebody is not enough really to cause the mosquito to bite one person and then go and transmit it to somebody else. There's a lot of epidemiological studies that have been done, and they have shown that it is not possible to transmit HIV when somebody gets through a mosquito bite.
So it's more about the quantity of blood more than it is about the fact that HIV cannot replicate within a mosquito.
Yes, it is more about the quantity of blood and the amount of infectious dose that is required in order to establish a new infection.
Oh, wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. I'm not sure you can any voice note lab. Ayiko. Okay, but Prof, just before we close, how do you as a scientist now, then begin to bridge the gap between, your science research being in the lab, especially now, we're all calling out for young people to be involved in science and research, especially after COVID. All of a sudden scientists became popular people and being a scientist was an it thing, because now all of a sudden people are talking about scientists are the ones who know. But how do you then bridge the gap between what you're doing in the lab, but also all the stuff that's happening at community level and having people to respond to the lab tests and a change in behavior within the community? How can we bridge the two?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that we could make as scientists is to isolate ourselves and think that just because we are doing cutting edge research or interesting research, that somehow that is going to change the world.
Sure.
I think to change the world requires partnerships. Partnerships are really, really important. And what I've learned in my life is that in order for me to be successful, I need a community. I cannot be without the community. And so it's very important for me as a scientist to be engaged, intensely engaged in what is going on in society. It's important for me to go and speak to young people and to community members about the kind of work that I'm doing and hear them out. Is this the kind of thing that they want? Is this the kind of research that they want? We need to have this dialogue so that it is not scientists coming to tell the community what to do.
Yes.
It should be a dialogue. It should be a communication. It should be a partnership between all of us, because none of us by ourselves is going to change the world. But I can tell you, if we all work together, we can be a very powerful force.
Sure.
And if we go together, we can be a powerful force and transform even our continent to be a much better place, so that we are not a basket case.
Sure.
But rather that solutions begin to come out of Africa and people will be running to Africa. That's my dream, is that, Africa has the youngest population of all the continents. And so the potential in Africa is immense. And if we just believe in ourselves and work together, we can make big things happen for the future. So I have a lot of confidence, particularly in our young people. And I think that young people we need to give them opportunities so that collectively, together, we can change the world. And they also need to know that they, just by themselves, are not going to change the world. But if they work, if they are willing to take opportunities, willing to learn, be teachable, but also bring their own ideas on the table, because nobody has a monopoly of ideas, then we can make big things happen.
Wow. Prof Ndung'u for president, African president. Well, I love what you're saying, Prof. It absolutely resonates with me and what I do through a program called Indoni, My Heritage, My Pride. Maybe you can just go into that and Google it so you know what it is, what else I do. But just in closing, Prof, with you having said that, what excites you most in Africa and in African management of HIV that is coming up now? What is it that excites you more about the research that is coming up?
Well, I'm excited, actually, first of all, by the progress that we have made.
Sure.
When I started in this field about 30 years ago, the forecast was that whole countries in Africa would be wiped out by HIV. There were forecasts that maybe a third of populations would be wiped out by HIV/AIDS. But we overcame that problem of HIV/AIDS, and now HIV/AIDS is a chronic disease that is quite manageable. If you are living with HIV, you can manage it better than somebody, for example, with high blood pressure.
Sure.
So the first thing that we need to realize is that we have made a lot of progress, and we should be very proud of that, because we have worked together, and it hasn't been easy. But what excites me looking into the future, again, is young people. I lead a network. It's called the Sub-Saharan African Network for TB and HIV Research Excellence. And what we try and do is to do science, cutting-edge science, like the one that I've just been describing, that can bring new solutions. But the next thing that we want to do is leadership development. We need leadership. People who will bring us together to work on important and challenging problems so that we can change and make the lives of our people better. So I'm excited about young people and the potential that lies there. There's no other continent with as much potential as we do. And so I really do look forward to seeing great things and good things coming out of our continent.
Yes, well, one day Africa will be led by Africans. Thank you so much, Prof Ndung'u. Thank you so much for your time. Even next time, should we call you, please, we'll be very humbled to have you like we have been now. Thank you so much for your time. Prof, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much, Prof, and have a beautiful evening.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I really enjoyed it. And I'll be back if invited.
Sure, you will be invited. Thank you, Prof. Bye.
All right, bye.
Cheers.
Welcome to Medilution Lifestyle Wellness Clinic and Spa, where health is everything. As an integrative medical practice, we offer holistic, individualistic treatments. Each journey begins with a full blood screen and a complete medical examination, followed by a personal treatment program tailored to your unique needs. We also offer a wide range of services including weight loss programs, detox programs, skin and beauty treatments, aesthetics, stress therapy, and lifestyle coaching. We are located at 6 Old Main Road, Bothos Hill, South Africa. Find out more on our website www.medilution.co.za or contact us on 031-765-8475 or send us an email at info@medilution.co.za. We are open Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yo, wow, Sithando Sami, that was powerful and beautiful. Thank you so much to Prof. Kuhle ukuthi ukhulume nabantu bakini abamnyama banolwazi. Uyabona-ke, nangi umuntu omnyama uyena olidayo kwi-research kwezasesayensi, okusho ukuthi nawe uwumuntu omnyama, you are capable. So uma-ke lapho khona, so kuma uyithathe, uwumuntu omncane, funda, hamba ufunda isayensi, uhambe uthole ukuthi wena kwi-community yakho, iy'nkinga ezikhona, kube wena ozozisolva lezo nkinga. Singaloko silinde abantu baphesheya ukuthi basinikeze ama-hand out, ngoba bazothi mebesuka lapho bethi asanika amaphilisi, asanika ukuthi mase siyafa. Kanti ekugcineni zonke izinto zasuke e-Afrika, ngoba kwawona amaphilisi la sikhuluma ngawo, ngizoke ngikhulume ngayo ngelinye ilanga njalo, zonke inhlobo zamaphilisi ngokuthi zisuka kumuthi muni osuka e-Afrika, ngoba impande yokuphila yonke isuka la kuthina e-Afrika. So sithando zami, ngiyathemba ukuthi kukhona okade lalele lapho, mhlambe unayo i-HIV or u-affected, kunomuntu oseduze kwakhe one-HIV, ngiyathemba ukuthi likhona ithemba lakhekile ngaphakathi kuwena, ngiyathemba ukuthi ulwazi futhi lwakhekile ngaphakathi kuwena, kodwa kakhulu ukuthi wazi nje sithando sami ukuthi uthando lukhona, nokuthi umuntu wakho ungamjivazi, ungamgcinezeli omunye umuntu if ene-HIV, but more yazi ukuthi kunethemba, likhona ithemba, kuyeza ukulapheka kwe-HIV. And yes, khona la uDr Nomcebo Mthembu Network, imini yokuqala ukuthi ngikutshele uma sokukhona. Kodwa qhubeka nje kube khona sithando zami, zithande wena, zinakekele inhliziyo yakho, nakekele umzimba wakho, nakekele abantu abaseduze kwakho nabantu abakuthandayo. Till next time on Intimate with Dr. Nomcebo Mthembu, always Sunday at 6, there is always sex. So we YouTube, like, subscribe, follow, fire notification button. I will always be here. Sundays at 6, there will always be sex in this house. See ya. Bye-bye.